All right, I've put it off for long enough. It's time to start having a look at this tray. I want to have a bit of a chat with you guys on where I go with this tray. Now, with my GQ tray, that was a lot more simple because it's just a flatbed, right? And it doesn't have a canopy. And so I could just have as much aesthetic tube as I wanted. Whereas with this one, I was tossing up between a few things. I would have loved to have like a canvas canopy on it, but I've decided against that. I'm actually gonna go with like an aluminium canopy, like dog box sort of thing. Now, I'm someone who prioritizes wheeling over all else. I don't have a partner. I don't care about living comfortably. Like, I'm only gonna have like a canopy this thick, one drawer, a small fridge. I don't drink. I don't eat a whole lot of food, to be honest. Comfort isn't really a big concern of mine. And so some of the dramas I'm having. Number one was, what headboard do I do? You know, like I'm gonna have an alley canopy. Like, I love tube headboards like the GQ. Do I really want to have a tube headboard that's like sticking out slightly further than the canopy? And if I did do that, do I want like exo tube around it so I can still lay it up against trees, so that like maybe you've got tube here at each end of the canopy, and then like a tube there at the top corner, and then a tube here at this corner, and like have it swing away so you can open the door and get into it? Or do I want it to be nice and uniform with the contour of the canopy? So like the canopy comes up like this. Do I want RHS headboard doing the same thing? And then along the side of the tray, on the GQ, it's 75 by 50 RHS with a tube slider up the whole side. Do I have RHS around the exterior of the tray, or do I do like twin tube? And then at the back with that twin tube, do I have it like come along here and then separate to come into the top and bottom of the tailboard? Then we'll go out to the GQ tray in a second and have a look at some of the stuff I've done on that. Must-haves, I must have tube flares. The folded mud guards just get absolutely bent, torn up, ripped up, whereas the GQ ones, tube, 32 MB, just you can put it up against anything and it puts up with it. So yeah, must-have is tube fenders. Another must-have is a dovetail. It's what makes building four-wheel drives beautiful, because we all look at things in a different way and we all have our preferences. And so if you like square back trays, that's mint. It's however you want to build it. But yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, looking at a bird's eye view of a car, the front's sort of like that, and so the back sort of should be like that too. There's so many variables. And then once you've made your choice, you've got to work out how you're going to do that. And I'll show you what I mean. So this is the GQ tray. It's got RHS 75 by 50 all around the outside. And then I've got a tube slider up the whole length of the tray, and then the tube fender. Now, the reason I've done it like this is because if I didn't have this slider up the whole length of the tray, you would drive along something and get caught on this and this, whereas this, it planes the same as this, and so it gives you pretty much a length of tube to slide the whole tray up along, and you're not going to get hung up on anything. Aesthetically, I don't think this looks as good as just having a fender protrude from the tray. I wanted to have something more aesthetic for the GU. I don't just want to make another one the same. If this was to be tube around the whole exterior of the tray, where do you butt this up to? Because I've also seen where the fenders just notch straight into the tube side of the tray, and so it looks like a perfect hexagon and it just looks weird. It needs that bend there. And so if I was to have tube around the exterior of the tray, how do you put this into it? Do you have it like stack up on the outside? Do you have it stack up underneath? And then do you still do like a tube headboard, even though there's going to be a canopy here? Does the canopy sit inside here? And is that going to allow the door to open? Or do you have the twin tube sort of here instead, so the canopy can still butt up against here, and have this second tube sort of protect the back of the cab a bit? It's just all stuff you got to think about. With this design, I was originally going to have one piece of tube go down like this, one piece of tube go down like this, and then have one bar in between it. And then I was going to have a center bull bar sort of hoop, and then have this one come down and meet it. Any way I cut it, I wasn't going to be able to get the infills to plane correctly because the top is RHS. And so the only way I could think to do it was to have the RHS set the angle and then come down across, tube up to here to meet this one, and then this tracks correctly with this, and then all your infills plane correctly with the face of these type thing. I don't want to do this tailboard again because it was a cheat way out of having tube, RHS and infills at the back of the car. I don't want to cheat my way out this time. I want it to be exactly what I want. And so then we have the last thing, and that's tray mounts. A lot of people commented when I built this tray that this wasn't going to hold up. These were all just going to roll over. Now, I thought the same thing in my head as I was building it, but then I thought, man, there's 4 on each side. That's 8 pieces of 3mm mild steel at each one, and they've all got to move for one of them to move. They haven't, but the GU is going to have more weight on it than this, and so I am going to change that in this one. I just like using RHS on its side because you just know that this is absolutely 100mm, right? You lay this on its side, it's 100mm. You lay this on its side, it's 100mm. And then, you know, the bed of the tray is going to be, you know, 250 sort of off the tray mounts at all corners, no ifs or buts. It's just math. But yeah, I am going to brace these by some means on the next tray. They still aren't an issue. But, you know, that's not to say everyone in the comments was wrong. Like, I actually even thought the same thing. But yeah, I haven't had an issue yet. And as you can see by the tube all around this thing, it's had some hard hits. I had the long weekend, and so Drew and I went away for that. I'll chuck a couple of clips in here. I actually did film it, but because it was just like touring and camping, you know, it didn't really suit what I do. Let me know in future if I do just a plain touring trip like that and film it. Would you guys want to see it, or, you know, are you more interested in the harder stuff like myself? I did do a couple of little tinkery jobs on this sort of where I could, and so I'll catch you up. So here you can see I've got the grounds coming up this chassis rail, and I've got the power coming up this chassis rail. I wanted originally all of them to be coming up this chassis rail because the exhaust is on the other side, but there's just not enough room to get 4 cables up this entire rail. If this becomes a Hornet, then I'm gonna need 2 more cables, and so there'll be 2 grounds coming up here and 2 powers coming up here. So the power comes around the sub tank over there and onto the isolator and then to the battery, and the ground comes straight up and straight onto the negative. And then we have the beginning of the tray. So this is how I've built my last 2 trays. I've just changed the height depending on what car it was. So this is 75 by 50 3mm wall. I've always used blocks and then bearers on top. I wasn't gonna do it like this, and I still might not do it like this, but I had to start the tray and I haven't had time to get anything cut out. I would like to get something cut out. However it turns out, I can always cut these blocks off and then make up proper tray mounts and drop it back on. They're just a placeholder at the moment. I didn't bother filming this because it's just cutting up a bunch of blocks and then tacking 2 of these to it, and it was last night, it was pretty late. And so I've actually designed this entire tray in CAD, and that's been super handy because it means that I've got all the dimensions as I go. And so the plan for today is to pretty much just get the bed on here. And so I'm gonna build it on flat ground somewhere, and then I'll sit it onto here. And so yeah, that's just gonna consist of 3 75 by 50 pieces with runners going from, you know, through the middle at a certain spacing, and then that'll sit on top of here with a recess of about 15mm, I think. And so yeah, we'll get those cut up and mitered up, tacked up, so we can sit it on top of here. Okay, so from my drawing, I know that the RHS bed of the tray is gonna be 1950 outside to outside. And so I'm gonna miter the front 2 corners because that way I don't have to cap it in. And then I'll do the slats in the middle, 15mm deep, which are gonna be 50 by 50. And I'll leave the end at the moment just straight because I'm gonna actually need to miter up a piece of 50 by 50 to be the dovetail. So we'll get started on the 45s first. Now, eventually I'm gonna get a real bandsaw in here. Unfortunately, King Chrome doesn't make a bandsaw at the moment. Hopefully they do in the future. I'm gonna give this a go because I'm sick of using a grinder. Dust everywhere, sparks everywhere. And so yeah, I'm gonna give one of these a go. It's actually really tricky to use, especially without a vise. All right, that's the back piece. Something Drew always taught me in the other few trays we built together. The seams, always face them down, because even though you might struggle to see them on the outside now, when it comes time to paint, let's say you've got an RHS tailboard and some of them have the seams facing out and some of them don't, you're gonna see them straight away. So yeah, always face your seams down. One side down. Let's get this other side done. Man, I will say that this isn't the most friendly piece of equipment, although it would probably be a lot easier if I had a vise. I do have a vise, but I haven't made my welding bench yet, so that makes it a bit harder. But anyway, so I might get just one piece that can set my insides sort of thing. But I'll brace the corners anyway as we tack it up to keep it all square. So this is a little welding stand that I made. I made it a couple of weeks ago in order to practice a bit because I haven't done tube and miters in a while. So you can see around the bottom. And by the way, that seam's facing out. Like I was gonna run out of steel if I had to flip it and then re-miter it in the other direction. And so yeah, that's what it looks like when the seam faces out. It was all just out of scrap stuff. Like these are all just scrap bends and I bent them all to the same, like I bent them all to 90s and had a bit of a practice. And then all this is just off-cut from my GQ tray. All right, sorry, I just had to pause the camera there for a second and just nut that out. I kept on screwing up one side. I think it must be the floor. So 2 tacks on the outside, use it as a hinge, get it square, tack it up so it can't move. Same on that side. Now I'm gonna do a few more tacks. I measured down exactly 1700 to each outer corner. And then I went from that corner to that mark, that corner to that mark, and I'm within 1 mil. So she's square. And yeah, I'm gonna run around and tack up some corners and then we'll get these 2 bars in and then we can lift it onto the car. Okay, because it's just me, I might have to just tack something on here so I can pick it up. Well, this could be really funny if my tacks break. Nah, I trust that. That's so good. Thank God. All right. Okay, I think we're happy to tack this down. I just sort of had to go around and like square it all up with the car. That's like real tedious. It's the worst bit, I reckon. But the things that are important are the body and the chassis. As long as it's square and happy with that, it doesn't really matter. The tray mounts on GUs aren't that reliable. Like they're a bit wonky, even though they're in a line, like whereas cruisers sort of do that, they're still quite wonky. In my case, they were perfect that way, which is good. But like you wouldn't know what they're doing in terms of like leaning over and that, even if you do get them butted down happy. It's good to get it lined up with the cab. It's good to get it lined up with the chassis. So yeah, I think the next thing will be, I'm gonna throw a couple of tacks down to get this all happy. So I'll show you how I checked it. So these holes that are in the chassis, they're actually used by Nissan, you know, in the manufacturing procedure. Like if you go and look at your GQ manual, they actually use these holes in the chassis as datum points to, you know, measure the chassis. And so they should be the same on every car on both sides. And so I'm just wedging the ruler into that and just going to the bottom corner of that. And that is 510 on the dot. and that is 510 on the dot. That's all good. And then the way I did the front is a little bit more cowboy, but it's about all you can do. And that's, I run a ruler just under the radius of the RHS, like that, like 106 and 65 from the back. So the magic numbers were 106 and 65. And anything that I'm building like over a meter, try and get a tolerance of 1 mil. Yeah, 1 mil per meter, you're doing pretty good. And so yeah, I think the next job will probably be to get some more of these slats in. Now this is gonna have a canopy sitting in it. I care how the vehicle performs off-road and that's it. And so I don't want a massive canopy. 1 meter canopy is gonna come to the back of this coil brace here. Like, it looks small to you guys probably, but it seems massive to me. And 800 comes to here. I was gonna put the side slats in a fashion that allowed me to bolt the canopy to them, because the tray's not gonna have a floor at the front. The floor's gonna start after the canopy because it's a lot of weight that I don't need there. This one's not gonna be that useful to bolt to anyway, because it's not gonna come all the way out to here, because I want this wheel to be able to tuck up into here. I guess I could have it bolted long ways like that and then just make them all even. We might do that. We might just make them all even, and wherever it lands, we'll add a support for it. So yeah, I need to make 2 more that are 1850 and 1 more that is 1240. It's now time to get all these spaced evenly and clamped and tacked. 450, which is right there. That is the tray so far. I'm pretty happy with that bit of progress. The next thing we probably got to attack is getting the dovetail done at the back. And so that's gonna take a little bit of quick math, and I'll give all these a bit of a sand up from where I tacked the braces on. Gee, that helps, just like bracing up your right-hand corners. Morning guys, it's a new day and I'm going to keep moving along with this tray. I think I'm going to get started on the tailboard. I think the last thing you guys saw was this was all just like had green left on them, and then I had to go out for dinner last night. When I got home it was pretty late, but I just wanted to get this nipped up and so I didn't film it, but as you can see it's pretty simple. All I did was got my final lengths, then cut the angles for these outside pieces, and then got the angles for this, halved those angles for the miter, and then got the angle for these and cut those, and then trim these off. Now these will be hidden by the infills that are gonna be here. I bent up this piece for the tailboard here, so that's gonna go right there. And so I'm actually probably gonna have to finish weld at least the base of this before I can get that onto there. But yeah, I wanted to get it all tacked in because I mentioned before in my rock slider building video that steel moves a lot when you weld it. And so it's really important to brace as you go. And so like all I did was tack these up at the right angles and then tacked them into here so that, you know, they can't move. But yeah, I might have to get these finish welded and then sanded up so that I can tack this on. It's also really cool to see the battery tray and the exhaust and everything all up under there and working. So I'll give you a quick look at that. So you can see that's all tucked up under there nicely. And it also means if the canopy ever comes off, you know, I can still have power on the back and everything. Just have like an Anderson plug there that plugs into a fridge and I can run a bare tray back. Let's get these finished welded and then we'll start getting this tailboard on. I end up switching to one of these pads. Drew always told me to use these over those flappy discs, and I could never get it right. Like, I could never figure it out, like holding it the right angle and that. The flappy wheel was taking too long, and so I just gave it a crack, and I actually got it right, finally. Okay, so I'm just about to tack that piece on the bottom here, and I'll show you what we've got going. I've got a center line on that piece of RHS under there. I zeroed out my angle gauge on the side of the tray and then zeroed that out to the Milwaukee so that I know that the Milwaukee is level with the car. And so when I tack the tube to the bottom of this, I just need to make sure that the laser is centered on the tube as well, and then I know that the tube is right angle with the tray. I think we'll tack him in there. I've been mucking around for a little while, just getting the height right and the angles right. I can see it's still just leaning this way, so I'm gonna tack the back first. All right, it might be time to bend up these other two sides now. I'm nervous about these because they're a wacky shape. Because you'd think, oh yeah, I could just come down there and across to this. But that changes plane because of the dovetail. That plane ends about here. And so there actually has to be a second bend to follow the plane of the tailboard. And so it's got to come down, across, and then kick just there where this is. So yeah, we'll see how we go anyway. I'm not fully competent as a fabricator, certainly not with bending tube. And so it's hard to try and film as I'm trying to work it out for myself as well. You know what I mean? So yeah, anyway, we'll give it a crack. So there's my tailboard there. Part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 2, yeah, we've already done that. That's the middle part. And so what it does is it's got each individual piece. And so I'm just gonna trust it. I don't think you guys have seen this yet, but I've finished my bender stand as well. So I've got the foot pedal down here, and then I've got all my die racks on this side, WD holder, and then my other backing dies on that side. But yeah, we'll get this pipe loaded in. So the first one, we're going to 65 degrees. And so sprung back, we're at exactly 65. And now this next bend has got to be clocked 38 degrees. So you can see I'm 37.85, which is 0.15 out, which is fine. Anything under a degree is fine. So I've got my thing lined up here, got that done. And we are going to bend it to 32 degrees. So let's give it a whirl. So this is the driver's side. So that is going to end up there like that. I really like that. I'll like it even more if I can repeat it. I'll give the next one a go. If this is going to swing into a bend,
Then I clamp it up against what it's gonna swing into, and then hold a ruler from where it's gonna go to, get the meeting point of the top, get the meeting point of the bottom, and then sort of draw my own little wraparounds for the notch. The reason you gotta do it top and bottom is because sometimes it doesn't always come into the tube straight. So the top one's coming in here, the bottom one's coming in here. So the notch is actually on that angle. So yeah, I'm just gonna cut close to that with the grinder, work my way back slowly, just sneak up on it with a flat wheel. Ash from the groundwork taught me that. He said, with tube, you gotta sneak up on it. I think we're getting pretty close. Problem is I can't just sit it there because it's an awkward piece. So I've just been like tacking it to this back corner and then clamping this bit up. All right, well, that is the tailboard all tacked up. I really like how that turned out. The GQ one, God, I'm gonna wanna redo that one now. I think the next thing will be to do the headboard, which hopefully won't be too much of a drama, as long as I can get all 4 bends on the same plane. But for now, I think we're gonna have a spell. We're gonna have something to eat. It's 4 o'clock, and so yeah, if we do keep going, you'll see me in a minute. If not, then it'll probably be next weekend.
So we're back and ready to do the headboard. Our total cut length is going to be 3,400. And so I might go and cut that. We'll bring it in here and we'll start bending up this headboard. Always like the seam facing up just so I've got somewhere to reference. So the first one's going to be 269.75. The next one's going to be 734.5. Next one's going to be 2279.5. And then the last one is going to be 2899.5. Now, this is really tricky to do. You've got to get every angle really, really close, like within half a degree when it's such a big distance. And you've also got to make sure they're all on the same plane too, within really tight tolerances, because again, it's not over a broad distance. So this all matters a lot more than the bends I was doing for the tailboard. I've also set this table up to be around about the same height as this die, just to try and keep everything flat. First thing we're going to do is get our grip line lined up. Nip up this spring back pin as we go. I think we're pretty much ready to start bending. So the first bend is to 16 degrees. Now for the first bend, I'm just watching the seam on the inside, because as soon as I see like a little bit of a kick there, I'm just gonna make sure that my dial wire is close to 0. Okay, we're away. 16 degrees. I'm going to attach my dial gauge so that I can get the next plane right. Put it on the die, zero it out, get it very close back to 0. And now we're going to pull it through ready for the next bend. Get it lined up with the next bend mark. And now we want this to be back in line. So our next bend is 74 degrees. Now this one is a little bit awkward. Might set it up here and then we'll pull it out this way and poke that side in here. So notice we're always zeroing back to the die. So now, because the angle gauge is zeroed to the die, we're just getting it back to 0, or as close to as we can. There you go, that's 0.00. I mean, if it was a smaller piece than this, then under a degree would be fine. But because this piece is so big, a little mistake is a big difference. Let's go, 74 degrees. The best thing we can hope for at the moment is that all of these bends are on the same plane. It wouldn't really surprise me if one or two are underbent. I always err on the side of underbending because you can always nip them up a bit more. And so what we'll do is we'll lay it on the floor, make sure that it's all on the same plane. Okay, so test number one, we're gonna chuck it on the floor, make sure it's flat. This is where I built the tray, so it was reasonably flat. Yeah, that's pretty flat. And then the next thing I want to do is just check all of the angles. So I'm going to put it here. That's 15.85, so 0.15 under, that's fine. That's 73 exactly, so that's 1 degree under. So what I'm going to do is just go through and nip these ones up a little bit tighter, and then we'll carry on with getting it the right length to get it onto the tray. All right, I'll get it back in the machine. I'll sort this out. You guys don't need to see that. I'm just gonna be nipping these up a slight little bit more, and then we'll get this to length and get it on the tray. Okay, so that was a little bit of mucking around, but I think I'm there. So that's the headboard. That is just big enough to go around the outside of the canopy. And then there's gonna be a second one at the back, and I'm actually gonna have like a tube exo going around the whole thing. And I have an idea to make like the bars that go on the outside of the doors swing open when you open the canopy door. I've never seen it done before. It was just an idea I had. And this whole tray is based around sort of the headboard cage going around that canopy. So like the width and everything is all set up for that. I think it's probably time to start having a look at these wheel arches. So I might have to have a look at some wheel centers to find out where they're gonna sit. And then as soon as I know where the wheels are gonna come up and sit, then I can work out where those tube guards are gonna go. It's been a little while since we caught up. I've done a lot of bending clips in this video so far, so yeah, I've got both of those. I think they're pretty close to being acceptable, but yeah, I can't get them tacked there well enough until I get the tray welded out, because there's a miter joint under there where the tube butts up to, and so I'm gonna get the tray off the car, get like a bulk of it welded out, so then I can actually get some meaningful tacks on these and see how they look. Alright, so I've got all the welding out of the way at the front here. I've fully welded these off, and I braced these. That's why this is grinded here. I actually braced these from here to here while I welded them off, just to keep it nice and square. And now I'm just tacking this on to see if it's going to be acceptable or not. With tube, for me at least, I just do the best I can, you know what I mean? Like a degree here and there, a couple of mil here and there, I don't worry about, because I'm just not precise enough to get it that good yet. I already feel better and more confident than the last tray, so, you know, I am progressing. I don't know, it's hard for me. If it's easy for you, then maybe you can give me some tips. So I've got like a 2-foot square clamped to the top rail back there, and what I'm doing is I'm running my eye down this to make sure that this is 90 degrees with the tray, and just doing a couple of tacks. All right, that's one side down. I'd really like to get the other side down before I pack up. I shit myself then. I was a bit worried I wouldn't be able to get the welder in there, but I can, so that's all right. I might get this other side tacked up to that same point, and then we'll call it. King Chrome drill goes all right so far. The notch is not easy. Like you're sending a hole saw straight through the side of heavy tube. All right, got to cut 25 mil off that one and 25 mil off that one.
Now this here is what I'm looking at. See the 6 foot square up the back there? That's what I'm trying to sort of line up with these. It's not a perfect system, but it's about all I can think of. And then it's just a matter of running around and tacking what's either gonna help the angle or avoiding what's gonna make it worse, if that makes sense. Right. So it's another night here in the shop and I'm just working on the back of these tube guards. Now, I made an executive decision that I was going to use the prefabs just for the back 2 corners because I don't like it when tube guards have that big sweeping bend. Even though in the scheme of things, my bender has quite a tight radius, it's a 6-inch radius die for 40 MB, it's still gonna end up like that. And so when you go to attach a mud flap, you've either got to attach it from where it starts to straighten up, or you've got to have like a thing that sticks out here with this weird gap there. And so, I don't know, it's not incredibly tasteful to use them, but you know, once you weld them up and sand them out, they don't look too bad. And it's better to have a tight radius there in my opinion. So I've got one knocked out and now we can do the other one together. So using those to measure the distance between the tube and make sure it's the same, that was a tip that Matt Kinsella gave me. So now we need to make the last tube that goes from here up to here. And so I'm gonna put my angle finder on the outside there. I'm gonna zero that. And then I've got one of these gimmicky things and we're going to place that onto there. Now this is the shape from the other side, so that should get us fairly close. And all I want to do is hold this up to there and get our angle right. That's our rough length there, which is 328. That's exactly the same as the other side. That's what I like to see. And so that's going to be where our longest point goes, which is up here. All right, we're happy with that. Let's do one final check here. Yeah, mint. So yeah, I've had this up on the hoist and welding out everything underneath. As you can see, I have absolutely totaled this jumper from welding overheads. It sucks. And while it was up there too, I sanded out these prefab bends on the tube guards. That's a prick of a job too. You ought to see the dust on the ground here. Gonna be metal dust in here everywhere for weeks to come. But yeah, I'm gonna do all the welds from above now. I'm gonna pump through those real quick and then I'm gonna call it a night. So I got up early this morning and did the front half of these mud guards and just got them knocked out sort of thing. And the next thing on the agenda is to get this lowered down onto the back of the GU and spaced 25 mil higher than what it was, because I've got a feeling I might have to lift it 25 mil
And so that's why I haven't completely welded these blocks yet, because they're probably gonna get cut off and the tray will be raised 25 mil. So yeah, I'm gonna drop it down onto the car, some extra 25 mil spacing, just to make sure that it doesn't look silly. So yeah, I did have that spaced up by 25 mil a minute ago. It does need to come up. I didn't weld these blocks right out. I've got 100 by 50 over there. These are 75 by 50. And so the whole tray is gonna come up 25 mil. But yeah, for now, I'm gonna bolt it down, get it out and have a good look at it. So I'm gonna keep working on the infills here, and so you're not gonna see that until next episode. But yeah, we did get a lot done. But yeah, thank you very much guys for watching. I'm sorry it's been so long since the last upload. I did have a video planned for last Sunday, which was my upload day. But yeah, you did see a couple of clips of that trip in this video. And so if you would like to see that video, or you know, other trips like that, then I'm happy to show it. It didn't feel like me, but I don't know. Tell me what you reckon. And then this episode was supposed to go up today, which is already a week late. It just takes time, man. And so I stayed up until 4 o'clock this morning trying to get this video wrapped up for today, but it just wasn't gonna happen. And so, yeah, I kind of had a bit of a day off today. I put the Treps on the GQ, which is really cool to see that. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys in a fortnight.